Hello, good evening, and welcome to Scotland at 7. My name is Donald C. Stewart, and tonight's stories and headlines are as follows. We're now into day 216 of the Ukrainian war and the invasion by Russia, and Russia's illegal, illegitimate referendums in Ukraine, which could lead to Moscow annexing 15% of the country's territory when voting in the eastern provinces of Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson and Zaporizhzhia, which began on Friday, end today. Denmark's military has issued an image of gas bubbling at the surface of the Baltic Sea after unprecedented damage to the Nordic Stream pipelines. Seismologists in Sweden say they had detected what they described as two explosions in the regions of the Baltic Sea where the leaks have occurred on Monday. The Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights has said in a report that Russia's invasion of Ukraine had caused a dire human rights situation and led to a wide range of rights violations, including extrajudicial killings and torture that could amount to war crimes. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has called Russia's mobilization a frank attempt to give commanders on the ground a constant stream of cannon fodder in the Ukrainian president's nightly address on Monday evening. Georgia and Kazakhstan have said that tens of thousands of Russians had flooded into their countries from neighbouring Russia as military-aged men avoid military call-up. The Russian Orthodox Church head says Russian soldiers who die on the battlefield will have their sins absolved. Dmitry Medvedev, the hawkish deputy chairman of the Security Council of Russia and who was the president for a period of time in Russia whilst Vladimir Putin was the prime minister, allowing Russia to change its constitution and allow Putin to return after having served the 2 terms of office, has again threatened the West with the use of nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Refugees arriving from Ukraine have helped drive Germany's population to more than 84 million people, its highest ever level, according to the Federal Statistic Office. And Japan's Foreign Minister, Yoshimasa Hayashi, has commented on the detention of the country's consul, telling reporters that he was subjected to a coercive interrogation during his detention by Russia's FSB security service and that Japan had demanded an apology. The Philippines is in talks with Russia to buy fuel and other commodities, according to President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., who said the country's national interests had to take precedence over politics. The US pledged to provide Ukraine with $457.5 million in civilian security aid. The support was aimed at saving lives and bolstering Ukrainian law enforcement, said the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. The UK announced 92 new sanctions on Monday in response to Russia's sham referendums in Ukraine. The package of penalties target those behind the sham votes, as well as oligarchs and board members. In other news, in the United Kingdom, the Chancellor has been trying to calm city financiers as the UK economy continues to collapse. Prime Minister Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng have denied rumours of friction between them after they met in Number 10 to thrash out how to respond to the economic crisis which has engulfed the United Kingdom economy following the Chancellor's mini-budget as announced on Friday. In a meeting with Britain's top city bosses today, Mr Kwarteng insisted that the government's economic strategy will work, despite a market meltdown that sent sterling to record lows a day earlier. The Chancellor issued the assurances during a planned meeting with asset managers, pension funds and insurers from big firms, including Aviva, Legal & General, Royal London, BlackRock, Fidelity and JP Morgan. While the meeting was meant to drum up excitement for further deregulation, Kwarteng also took the opportunity to try to calm top investors after United Kingdom government bonds yields surged higher than even the rates paid by Greece and Italy, and the pound plunged to its lowest level against the dollar. Virgin Atlantic Chief Executive Shai Weiss has urged the government to consider reversing course because the economic situation was hurting consumers and the airline was deeply concerned. Mr. Weiss said the airline had converted its sterling holding into dollars several months ago, a smart financial position that was now worth a considerable amount of money and was protecting it from the currency shock. About 60% of its outgoings are in dollars, mainly aircraft purchases and jet fuel. Speaking at a press conference in London, Mr. Weiss said, "The weakness of the pound is hurting, not Virgin Atlantic, it's hurting the economy and it's hurting consumers because it's actually fulfilling or fueling the inflation vicious cycle that we're in." Now down to Liverpool and the Labour Party conference where Keir Starmer has said Labour will launch Great British Energy, a publicly owned energy company running clean UK power in its first year of government, saying the party will fight the Tories on economic growth. In his speech at the Labour conference in Liverpool, Starmer said the largest onshore wind farm in Wales was owned by Sweden. China had a stake in the UK nuclear industry, and millions of people paid their bills to an energy company owned by France. Labour said their proposed new company will be akin to EDF in France or Sweden's Vattenfall and would provide additional capacity alongside the private sector, but its goal would be to establish the United Kingdom as a clean energy superpower and guarantee long-term energy security. The Labour leader used his speech to attack the SNP, emphatically ruling out any Labour SNP coalition or pact if there was a hung parliament. Like Anas Sarwar said yesterday, Mr. Starmer said Labour would win back seats in Scotland and pointed to Labour's success in the local elections in Scotland, missing out that Labour was only able to take control of some local authorities in Scotland by doing deals with the very party they're going to take on in the economy, the Conservatives. Responding, the SNP's Westminster Deputy Leader Kirsten Oswald MP said, "You don't beat the Tories by turning into them, but that's exactly what the Labour Party is doing under Starmer's leadership by adopting the Tories' extreme Brexit, denying the people of Scotland's democratic right to choose their own future, and prioritising grubby council coalitions with the Tories across Scotland." Meanwhile, rehashed reports of constitutional tinkering provide absolutely no protection against Westminster austerity, she continued. Naked power grabs and repeated Tory governments we don't vote for. As well as the economy being a difficulty for the UK government, the plan to pay Liz Truss's Chief of Staff, Mark Fulbrook, through a private company, has been dropped. The decision to pay the new Chief of Staff, Mark Fulbrook, through a private company was dropped after criticism from within the Conservatives as well as from opposition parties. The UK government admitted over the weekend that Mr. Fulbrook would be paid through his lobbying firm, a move that could have helped him avoid paying tax. He had previously claimed the firm had stopped all commercial activities. However, it subsequently emerged that Mark Fulbrook had been promised a lucrative contract to run Truss's next election campaign, as well as being made Chief of Staff. However, the UK government has made a U-turn today, after an outcry from the opposition and some Tory MPs, with one saying it did not smell right, after tax changes in the budget making it easier to pay less tax if paid through a self-employed company. A number 10 spokesman said, "While there are established arrangements for employees to join government on secondment to avoid any ongoing speculation, Mark Fulbrook will be employed directly by the government on a special advisor contract." Previously, the government had said the arrangement was properly vetted by the propriety and ethics team. Mr. Fulbrook is already facing questions over his government role after it emerged he was questioned as a witness as part of an FBI inquiry into alleged bribery in Puerto Rico. Back to the economy and the issues facing many millions across the whole of the United Kingdom, as it has emerged that millions have been forced to take on multiple jobs to be able to afford basics in a cost of living crisis. A new survey has revealed that 5.2 million workers have been forced to take on second or even multiple jobs, and a further 10 million are planning to afford the soaring cost of living just days after the Tory government cut tax for the wealthiest and scrapped bankers' bonuses. The survey by insurance company Royal London found that over 45% could be working 2 or more jobs in the coming months as costs continue to rise, and nearly a third, 31%, are being forced into debt to cover basic bills. Commenting, the SNP's Work and Pension spokesperson Kirsty Blackman MP said, "It is disgraceful that, in the coming months and in the 21st century, we could see over 15 million people in the UK forced to take on additional jobs and work longer hours just to make ends meet during this Tory-made cost of living crisis." She continued, "People shouldn't have to do that, and not everyone is in a position where they can. The survey reveals that over a quarter of full-time employees already work over 48 hours a week." Looking abroad, we go to Ireland, where their 2023 budget seems to have a slightly different set of measures than one that was emerged on the UK. Ireland has announced its budget with a raft of one-off measures worth €4.1 billion, turbocharging a €6.9 billion ordinary package designed to insulate Irish voters from their cost of living crisis. The Irish Minister for Finance, Paschal Donohoe, said headline inflation will be 8.5% this year and just over 7% for 2023. Core inflation, which strips out energy impacts, is now expected to be 5.25% this year and just over 4.5% for next. The forecast for modified domestic demand, which measures the domestic economy, was cut to 1.25% for next year. The unemployment rate is expected to remain at low levels. Mr. Donohoe said, despite the headwinds and the recovery in tax receipts is broad-based, he said, including income tax take. The general surplus will be €1 billion or 0.5% this year and 2.25% for next. He said much of this was due to excess corporate tax, which could change at short notice, with €20 billion expected under this heading by the end of the year. He said public debt would stabilise at €225 billion if the trajectory continues of €44,000 per capita. However, the debt to GDP ratio is now projected to decline to 73% by 2025. The minister said corporation tax receipts are not being used for permanent increases in new spending. There will be a new metric called the GGB star to monitor the health of the exchequer receipts when multinational income is excluded. Michael McGrath, the Minister for Public Expenditure, said the budget was being delivered against an extraordinary backdrop of challenges. He said the experience of the last 3 years demonstrates Ireland's resistance and resilience as a nation. He said we have not experienced inflation such as the current level in more than 40 years. This is a budget for its time, a budget that seeks to respond with unprecedented measures, he commented, a breadth of measures and a speed of execution that we have not seen before. As he announced €90.4 billion in public expenditure next year with an additional contingency fund of €4.5 billion. He headlined one-off cost of living measures, which include a reduction in duty on petrol, gas, oil and diesel, and VAT on electricity and gas extended as a reduction until the end of February. A temporary business energy support scheme, which will pay up to €10,000 a month to businesses to cover up to 40% of the increase in their bills. Every household will get €600 in electricity credits in 3 payments of €200 each, the first before Christmas and 2 in the new year, costing €1.2 billion. A lump sum of €400 will be paid to fuel allowance recipients before Christmas and €500 for those on working family payment in November. There will be a public transport reduction fare until the end of 2023. Not-for-profit organisations will get €60 million this year for energy costs, and temporary funding of €90 million for tourism and the arts to help support the recovery from the COVID pandemic. On to the fears of sabotage as gas leaks into Baltic from Nord Stream 1 and 2. And this refers back to an earlier report from the war in Ukraine, where it appears that gas is seeping into the Baltic Sea from 3 separate leaks on the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines. And it's Denmark's energy agency who confirmed this on Tuesday, prompting speculation that the infrastructure at the heart of the energy standoff between Russia and Europe had been deliberately damaged. The Danish Energy Agency said it had found 2 leaks on the Nord Stream 1 pipeline northeast of the island of Bornholm and a third in the Nord Stream 2 pipeline in Swedish waters southeast of the island. A 5-mile exclusion zone for shipping has been set up around Bornholm, and flights below 1,000 metres have been banned in the area. Methane, the primary component of natural gas, partially dissolves in water, is not toxic and creates no hazard when inhaled in limited quantities. Breakage of gas pipelines is extremely rare, Danish authorities said in a statement. Therefore, we see reason to raise the preparedness level as a result of the incidents we have seen over the past 24 hours. Nord Stream AG, the pipeline operator, had on Monday morning reported an unexpected overnight drop of pressure from 105 to 7 bar in Nord Stream 2, which is filled with gas, but was cancelled by Olaf Scholz, the German Chancellor, shortly before Russia's invasion of Ukraine. A further drop of pressure was reported on Monday afternoon in Nord Stream 1, which Russia shut down indefinitely at the start of September, initially saying it needed repairs. German and Danish authorities initially did not comment on the cause of the extremely rare leaks, while investigations were continuing. However, this afternoon, the Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, said she cannot rule out the possibility of sabotage. With 3 separate leaks happening almost simultaneously, with some distance between them, it was difficult to imagine it was a random accident, Frederiksen said at a short press conference during a visit to Poland, where she is participating in the opening of the Baltic Pipe gas pipeline. Environmental non-governmental organisations warned that the leaks could result in large-scale environmental damage. And across we go to America, who are facing midterm elections halfway through Joe Biden's term of office, and there has been a focus on access to abortion increasingly in these US midterms, mainly due to November's in November, the US midterm elections are coming. Legislative races across half a dozen states, including Maine, North Carolina, and Wisconsin, could determine whether millions of Americans see abortion access expanded or restricted. This was due in part to the US Supreme Court's ruling in June, which has drawn increased focus on the down-ballot races, which typically receive little national attention. Of course, the decision in June was to revoke Roe versus Wade, meaning that abortion was going to be increasingly difficult throughout the whole of the United States to gain access to. Republicans have held a majority of state house seats across the nation since 2012. Both the Republican State Legislative Committee and the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, which support legislative candidates, reported a record pace of fundraising during the first half of the year. A Democratic-aligned group, the States Project, said it would spend a massive $60 million on state legislative races this cycle. Polls have consistently found the economy remains voters' top concern, but abortion has risen since June. A Reuters Ipsos poll last week found 15% of Democrats consider the end of national abortion rights the biggest problem facing the country, compared with 20% who cited the economy as their chief worry. Democrats point to a series of special elections in which they outperformed expectations as evidence that abortion has shifted the political playing field, including a New York congressional race last month. Democratic candidates have sought to ensure voters understand the connection between legislative races and abortion access after decades of federal protection. In Minnesota, where abortion has remained legal there under a state Supreme Court decision, Democrats warn that Republicans could eventually alter the landscape, either by putting a constitutional amendment in front of voters or by elevating more conservative justices. In North Carolina, abortion remains legal up to 20 weeks of pregnancy. However, in Wisconsin, abortions have stopped under a 19th century ban. In Arizona, where a state judge ruled on Friday that a 1901 abortion ban can be enforced, Democrats have vowed to protect abortion rights if they win the governorship. Michigan voters will decide whether to guarantee abortion rights in a November ballot measure. However, the Democrats have campaigned on the issue, warning that a Republican majority will find ways to restrict abortion even if the referendum passes, and arguing that a Democratic majority will be crucial if the referendum fails. In Maine, where abortion remains legal, Republicans are trying to win both chambers and the governorship, potentially paving the way for fresh abortion limits. Back home, and it has been announced that there is quicker and easier treatment for Scottish cancer payments. A programme which has given cancer patients improved access to treatments is being extended. Patients and health professionals reported significant improvements in access to cancer medicines thanks to the initiative, which was set up during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. The National Cancer Medicines Advisory Group initiative meant clinicians were able to make quicker decisions about patient medication, and also that some treatments could be taken at home rather than having to visit hospital. The number of hospital visits were estimated to be halved, reducing the risk of infection to patients and the burden on cancer services. An evaluation of the programme, which was supported by Healthcare Improvement Scotland, revealed high levels of positivity from patients, while clinicians suggested hospital visits for patients were halved. Healthcare Improvement Scotland is now developing ways to continue to provide advice on widening access to certain cancer medicines which are out with the remit of the Scottish Medicines Consortium. Health Secretary Humza Yousaf welcomed the plans to extend the programme. And even closer to home, to where we are in the studio, Glasgow has been announced as in the final running to host the Eurovision Song Contest 2023. An update on the bidding process for the 67th Eurovision Song Contest has confirmed that two cities, Glasgow and Liverpool, remain in competition to be the 2023 host city. There was a detailed assessment process with the original 7 cities being reduced to 2. Further discussions are expected now to take place with officials from both cities, Glasgow and Liverpool, and a final decision will be made within weeks. The final decision on the host city of the 2023 Eurovision Song Contest will be decided by the BBC in conjunction with the European Broadcasting Union. Commenting, the Scottish Government Culture Minister Neil Gray said, "We are delighted that Glasgow has made the final selection to host the 2023 Eurovision Song Contest. The Scottish Government will continue to engage with Glasgow Council as they progress their final bid." Well, that's it for this evening. But before I go, I just want to remind you that at Broadcasting Scotland, we depend on the generosity of our supporters. So to everyone who has donated and to everyone who has signed up to make a regular monthly payment, thank you very much. Our programmes will always be free to view. However, if you can afford £5 a month, please consider becoming a Broadcasting Scotland supporter. We have set ourselves a target of adding 10,000 new subscribers to enable us to employ staff to make more programmes. So from me here in the studio, it's good night and thank you for watching.